Hey Blazor fans, welcome back to Blazor State Has Changed. Sorry for a little delay during the introduction. Twitch was not telling me I was streaming live, so I was making sure that the stream was actually up and running. So if you're just joining the channel now, we're getting things kicked off. Trying to get my app synced up so I can see the feed activity. Now it's showing I'm streaming. This is good. This is good news. So I've got some good stuff lined up for today, I hope. The idea of the show is to bring you guys news every week and then do some live demos that are pretty unprepared. So I know my stuff fairly well, but I'm not pre-coding anything, so you can fail along with me. So hopefully we don't fail too hard, but we're going to try to do some stuff today with in-memory DB and do some entity framework CRUD operations with Blazor. We'll see how it turns out. So let's get into some news. So this week I was at DevUp conference in St. Louis, Missouri. It was a excellent conference. I had a lot of fun. You can see I'm joined by my friend here, Mr. Meeseeks, who I picked up at the conference. He's part of a really cool balloon guy that was at the show making just pretty much anything you can imagine out of balloons. He's there every year. If you get a chance to visit the conference in St. Louis, Missouri, I suggest you check it out because if you do, you get to see some really cool stuff like the one and only Richard Campbell get brought into a keynote literally in a Back to the Future DeLorean. Yes, this happened just last week. Super cool stuff. Had a great time with everybody that was out there. If you met me at DevUp and you learned about the show there, just chime in the chat room and let me know that's how you found me. Appreciate the feedback, and it'd be very helpful to learn where people are coming to the show from. So first up on the news agenda this week, the ASP.NET Community Stand-Up featured Blazor this week. They called it The Blazor Show, and the man himself, Steve Sanderson, was on the show showing off 0.7.0 previews. So those previews aren't out publicly yet. I'm sure you could get into GitHub and compile them yourselves and find them, but this is largely undocumented features. But he showed off some really cool stuff around a provider component, which can be used for things like theming and passing values throughout the application. And there's a new type of way of communicating between components that he showed off using this from tree parameter. So this was a way to do inter-component communication or cross-component communication. It's a really cool demo. In fact, it was so cool, we had a little bit of a mind-blowing moment here from Daniel Roth, who was very impressed, as well as the rest of us, about how easy it was to create this cross-component architecture and communicate values from one component to another. And in the demo, Steve demoed this tab component that just was super intuitive, the way it was built and interacted with checkboxes and things like that. So make sure you check out the ASP.NET community stand-up next, or on the recording that's online, and make sure you check it out every time it airs. I've got a link in the show notes to the episode, and again, you can find those links in the show notes on my website, which I'll show at the end of the news segment here. Also from the community, we have a really interesting project from Robin Sue, who goes by Suchimon on GitHub and in the Gitter channel. There's a really cool project here where you can switch in and out of Blazor client-side rendering and server-side rendering modes by just specifying a query string of mode and setting it equal to server. Then it'll kick over to Razor components, which is really neat. I haven't had a chance to dig into this myself, but all of the how-tos are up there on GitHub. And again, I'll link you out to this, and make sure you guys are visiting the Gitter channel. This is where I'm picking up some of these cool projects that people are sharing with everybody. Another thing I dug into, I like to look through some of the GitHub issues on the Blazor project. And this week, I found this one by Steve Sanderson. So this is an open issue about updating Mono. So there's been some updates to Mono. It looks like they're going to pull those into the 0.7.0 release of Blazor. And they have to do with the linker and debugger. So I'm expecting that there will be an enhanced debugging experience. The one that we have now is pretty much non-existent, and I'm not putting down the team. I think it's really amazing work they're doing, and it's just that early on that these things just don't exist yet. And I think part of the thing is they're waiting for the Mono team to build some of these features in. Again, this is all brand new stuff. WebAssembly's new. Mono runtime for WebAssembly's new. So this is super bleeding edge. And these aren't features that you'd expect out of the box, but they are things that are necessary for development. So it's exciting to see that more debugging features are starting to seep their way into the next release. Hopefully that's what this is. So I'll keep an eye on that and keep you guys informed on how that goes. So let's end this with a link out to my website. You can find me at edcharbonneau.com. I'll put all the show notes together here shortly after we wrap up the live show today, and I'll publish those on my blog where you can get all those links and go check those things out for yourself. Again, make sure you watch that community stand-up. Watch it all the way through because there's tons of good Blazor stuff in there, and then check out those GitHub projects and things. Some excellent projects going on in the community, and I'll try to feature some more of those next week. Did a really big feature last week with Fluxor and Biomon, so if you didn't check out last week's show, make sure you grab that. A little housekeeping, I'm getting a backlog set up on YouTube. It's going a little slow, but if you see shows disappearing from Twitch, don't worry, they will be reposted on the YouTube channel eventually at a later date. As soon as I get that set up, there's a lot of configuration to do there, and it's taken me a little bit longer than I had expected. They give you about 2 weeks on Twitch before they delete your shows, so you may see them disappear, but they are being archived. They're just not being set to public yet, so we'll see what happens there. Oh, sorry. No, actually, I did demo Biomon last week. So Bionic is the framework. I'm talking about the chat room here. Peter Morris says it was Bionic, not Biomon. Biomon is actually a separate feature to Bionic. So Bionic is a framework that is a clone of the Ionic framework for Blazor. Biomon is the live reloader for Bionic and just plain Blazor projects. So that'll clarify that. The Gradler says, great presentation at DevUp. Thanks for coming and joining me on the show. It was awesome seeing everybody at DevUp. I was lucky enough to actually give 2 sessions at DevUp. So actually 3 sessions. I talked about JavaScript, and I also had 2 Blazor sessions. Unfortunately, another person that was presenting on Blazor got sick. Fortunately for me, I got to present twice. So I talked to at least 100 plus people about Blazor, and it's awesome to see you guys come join me on the live show. Feel free to ask questions. We're going to do exactly what I said, live coding. We may fail. Just like that failed to switch to my coding screen here. Let's go ahead and jump into Visual Studio. And today I'm going to look at Entity Framework. And I do a lot of demo work because I'm a developer advocate for Progress Telerik. And I use the in-memory database of Entity Framework a lot because I'm building demo projects. Now, I'm going to dive into documentation just a little bit because the docs are fantastic. Really good friends with some folks on the .NET Docs team. A lot of those guys were over at the DevUp conference as well. And I want to show off the good work they do. And not only that, I can't remember all this stuff out of the top of my head, but you'll see that the in-memory DB for the Entity Framework is supposed to be used for testing. And while it's supposed to be used for testing, it is helpful to have that feature available for demo software. So I don't suggest you use it for any kind of production thing, but if you have a demo you want to push up on, say, Azure, that's just exactly that demo code, you can do that without it having a real SQL backend to it. So it's really handy for some other scenarios too, but you'll see it's advertised as for testing purposes only. So we're going to use it today. So just checking the chat here to make sure everybody's good. We've got Bruno Santos joining us here. He's having some streaming issues. Hopefully he gets those cleared up in case he has any good comments to make. He's the guy that's behind the Biomon and Bionic frameworks. So I'm glad to have you back as well. Let's go ahead and dig in and let's do a file new project. So we're going to start a brand new Blazor project. We'll do file new project. And today I'm going to be using the full stack development project. So let's give this guy a name. StateHasChanged. I think this is our 4th show. We'll go ahead and just call it StateHasChanged 4. Let's hope that doesn't come back to bite me again, where I keep forgetting the number. So we're going to do Blazor. This is the client side only. We're going to do Blazor ASP.NET hosted because we're going to do some interactions with Web API today. So I'm going to go ahead and new that up. We'll let that generate, and then we're going to have to go in and start grabbing some NuGet packages and configuring our project. Let's go ahead and open up the documentation for what we're going to be using today. And I've got a window that is not playing well with me. I may have to close some stuff out here. One moment while I try to figure out why Windows hates me today. Give me one sec. Let me get this configured over on the other screen. I'm missing my chat room right now is what the problem is. So I can see your messages on one screen over here, but not where I need to really see them well. Just give me just a sec. Get my pop-up chat window back out so I can see if you guys have any issues or want to chat about something or see anything in particular in the demos. All right, got that resolved. So now back into here. Let's go to docs.microsoft.com. And I want to look at this in-memory database feature of Entity Framework Core. So I'm going to go into EF Core. So I've gone to docs.microsoft.com, clicked on .NET, and under the .NET Core Guides, I'm going to click on EF Core. And let's go to database providers and in-memory database. And again, it always says for testing. They want to make sure people don't use this inside of a production app. We're going to do some demos today, so it'll work good for us. We're going to need the package. So you need the provider package. Entity Framework itself is installed with ASP.NET Core. So that comes out of the box, but to get the provider, we need to get this package. So I'm just copying this out. I could go to the command line and run this. I'm not a big command line guy. If you've seen the show before, I don't go to the command line very often. I'm a GUI guy, so I'm going to go into dependencies and browse for this package, and I'll just paste this guy in. And there's our Entity Framework Core in-memory provider. We'll go ahead and install that. So what this is going to do is going to allow us to build a database that is in-memory only. So we don't need an entire instance of SQL Server. We don't have to have that up on our server. Like I said, it's great if you want to publish something to Azure and quickly hack on something and not have Azure provisioning SQL databases and whatnot. It's pretty helpful in doing that. It's great for testing as well. So that's installed. We'll just double check in our dependencies here, make sure it's in there. There's our in-memory provider. All right, now we need to set this guy up. Let's go back to the docs. The setup is actually pretty easy. We don't want to write a provider. What we want to do, and we need to go testing with in-memory here. Click on the getting started. They've got kind of some scenarios lined up, but the first thing we need to do is get a context up. So we're kind of going to wing this, and we need to set up a context. So let's go ahead and create a folder on our server project. So let's do add folder, and we'll call this models. So we have a models folder. Now we need a context. So let's go in here and do add class. This is going to be our database context. I'm just going to kind of riff on this. We'll do a customers. So we'll build something that we can enter customers and receive customers out of a database. So we'll do customers context. Go ahead and add this class. All right, so now we have public class customer context, and we need to inherit from DB context. I'm going to hit control period. That should give me my option to add in my using statement. So we need entity framework core added here. So now we have that. And we should be able to go back to our docs here and see how to set this up. So in order to use the in-memory database, we need to set up these two constructors. We need to have an empty constructor, and we need to be able to pass in options. So we can copy these out. We could be lazy programmers. They do this a lot. Copy straight out of the docs, paste. We're going to get red squigglies in here because we need to change the names. They used blogging context. I'm going to use customer context. So again, we're setting up a database so we can add some records to it and drag those back out and put them into Blazor, and hopefully we can do some round-trip CRUD operations with this stuff. So now we have our database context set up. We need to have a DB set now. So we actually have to have a table to store these in. So I'm going to do prop tab, and we need DB set, and we'll call this customers. And again, we haven't defined what customers is yet. It wants to do customer context. We want a DB set of customers, customer, and then we'll call this customers. Sometimes IntelliSense helps too much, guys. It likes to bounce things around. We'll call that customers, and rightfully we have some red squigglies here because we don't have a customer object yet. So what we can do is hit control period here, and I'm going to say generate the type customers in a new file, and it's going to pop over in my models here, customer. And we don't have anything defined in there yet. We'll go ahead and hash that out in just a sec. This should get us far enough. Let's go ahead and it explains how to write tests, and we'll need this code here in a second. We're actually going to need to register this provider in our application to do it. They're showing it how to do it in the context of testing. Like I said before, this is something they specifically want us to use for testing, but we're going to abuse it a little bit. Let's go ahead and build out our customer real quick. So what would a customer have? Let's just say I'm going to use prop tab in here quite a bit. Let's give it a first name. We can also do a last name. It's just going to be kind of a plain old class object here. Again, we're going to use this in a little bit on the front end and try to do some editing that sends changes back to a database. Another thing we probably should have in here is an ID. We'll put this guy at the top, int customer ID. That should help when we start doing database work. And we'll do string company name, so we can store company name, and that should probably do it. That should be good just for some demo purposes here. We can go in and edit a couple string values. Maybe we should throw an integer in here just to trip ourselves up a little bit. We've already got a customer ID integer, but maybe we need something a little more. Trying to think, what would a customer have? What can we put in here that would represent a customer's data? Let's do let's assume we're collecting some kind of order information. We'll say total orders. Like to have some kind of orders in the database. Right, so we can do that, and we'll save that out. Won't need that for a little bit. I'll go ahead and close that window. And now we have our DB context set up. We need to register this as a dependency next. So we can call it back from our Web API controllers and do work with the DB context. So this works exactly like you would set up a normal Entity Framework connection. And we're going to go into our startup, and we're going to be registering the dependency here and configure services. So let's go in. We need to do it a little bit different than, little tiny bit different than normal. We're going to come back and reuse this in a moment, but we need to go to configuring DB context. So here we have our kind of our example. We've got this so far. We're going to be using these options, and on configuration, we don't need this quite yet. We're going to actually do this from using DB context with dependency injection. We have some really excellent documentation here on the ASP.NET Core docs. So let's go into DB context, configure services. This is what I'm looking for. And we want to add a DB context in here. So let's copy paste this. We'll go DB context, configure services. There we go. Under add MVC, I'm going to do add DB context. We need to use our context name, which was customers context. Control period. We're not bringing in our customer context. Why? Customers context, maybe. That's what it was. Control period. There we go. So we need to add our using statement up top. Control period will help us with that. Now here's where we need to configure the in-memory provider. So let's go up here and we'll do using Microsoft dot entity framework core dot in memory. Make sure we have a reference to this, because that will give us our extension method for in memory. Or is it use in memory? Oh, I can't find the extension method. So either I'm typing it wrong, or I don't have the right using statement up here. So let's go back to docs real quick. And we need to go back over, just going to use my back button here and find our DB context stuff. Use in-memory database from the reference in the NuGet package. All right, so am I setting it up wrong? Options. All right, let's pass it in this way. I'm not getting the right, not getting options coming up right in here. So let's do it this way. DB context options builder. This is what we're missing. Any framework core, customer context, and then we'll just give this a name. We'll say Blazor demo is the database name. Now we can come in here and we'll just say options. And that's why we had to set up that constructor. And I still am getting, oh, we've already, nope. Let's see what this is saying. Cannot convert from customer's context to builder. So I still have something configured wrong. Let's see what's going on here. I should be able to do use in-memory database context, new blogging context, text with options. Not quite sure what exactly. Add DB context with options. So it's saying there's the wrong type here. So we've got DB context options, use model, customer context, needs to be an options builder, which is what I thought I was passing in. This should be an options builder. Or, let's see. See if I can get this straightened out. Configuring DB context. Something I've done a million times, and let's see if I can figure out why it's not working. So I should be able to do this here, and I don't know why. Let's try options equals options. Use in-memory database. There we go. There you are. Now I should be able to do it. Give it a database name. I don't know what I added to make that work before, but there we go. That should do it. Let's see if this does a trick. There, red squigglies went away. And we have our configuration. So something I referenced, I guess it was, I was referencing in memory, and I needed, oh, I'm still missing something here. Expected. There we go. Close that parenthesis off. It's not needing our using statement, which is surprising me. I thought use in-memory database was part of that assembly. It turns out it's part of any framework core assembly. So I guess the provider, I don't know why it's set up the way it is. The extension method is outside of the provider. So that's the way that is set up. We should be able to use this now. And then let's go and we need to add records to our database. I can do this in configure services. Again, this is for demo purposes. I probably wouldn't suggest doing this outside of the context of so I wonder, questions coming through. I wonder if EF Core and in-memory DB would work on the client side. That's a really good question. We could possibly check that out in just a bit here. And Lohith said that it might not now, for now. I don't know. Boy, that would be that'd be interesting to see. I'm not sure if it's something that I'd I'd want to do. It could possibly work. You'd have to, for in-memory DB to work, you would have to use the entity framework in its entirety inside of DB context. Or I mean, inside of Blazor, which I'm not sure if any framework would work inside of Blazor. It depends on mono. Yeah. So it would... It'd be kind of a toss-up. I don't know why you would want to do that. That'd be an interesting experiment, but I don't know how useful it would be. Even if it worked, and I'm not sure what the use case would be for it. But nevertheless, in-memory database is really cool, and we're going to go back and look at testing again here with in-memory database because we need to get some setup stuff from here. I think they have it in the scenario here. Yeah, we want to add some items to this. So let's scroll through a little bit. This is what we want to do next. We want to write some records to the database. So let's set up a new method outside of this configure services. And let's call it initialize database. So init database, and we're just going to create some records on the database. For the lulz, yeah. So session storage is fine for caching on the client side. Yeah, I think that's it's probably not best to try to force SQL into the client. SQL on the web just seems like a terrible idea to me. I don't know. So we'll go ahead and grab this configuration out here. We'll just copy all this, and we don't need the asserts. We're not going to test anything. We'll just kind of copy this in. So what we want to do is set up our context. And again, we want to take the same database name here. So we want to make sure we're using the same database. Otherwise, we'll get records in another database inside of the in-memory database, and that won't be fun. And we just need to tell it to use our context. And I'm not sure what they're doing here. We don't need this. We don't need to do a service. Instead, what we want to do is context dot add, context dot customers dot add, and then we should be able to add a new item in here and seed the database. So we could do new customer, and then open up some curly braces and say customer ID equals 1. So for now, we'll just add a simple customer record here. Company name, Blazor Inc. Blazor Incorporated. That sounds pretty nifty. First name equals, I'll use my name here. Or we'll do, since I have my DevUp friend with me, we'll use his name for now. His first name will be literally Mr. Last name Meeseeks. I believe that's how you spell it. He's not going to correct me though, so don't worry about it. And we'll do total orders equals 100. So that'll give us a record to insert into the database. And now we can say context save changes, and that should give us a record. That should give us our first record in our database. So every time our app spins up, what's nice about the in-memory database is we're going to come through here. We're going to do this init database method, and because we're starting a brand new instance of the application, it's going to come in, it's going to register our context. It's going to come in and seed our database, which that may be a more proper name for this. Let's use our refactoring tools here. We'll say seed database. There's other ways to seed databases too. This is just a handy way of doing it with in-memory database. So we'll do this seed database routine, and we'll come in here and just add a record. And later on, I'll show you a way to add lots of records. But what's really cool is that every time we create a new instance of this app, we get a brand new database. So if we go in and start editing and adding new records and deleting things and all that, as soon as we close the app out, and yeah, keyboard shortcut for refactoring is Control-R+R. I always forget that. For some reason, it never sticks with me, and the one from Visual Studio Code does. And then when I'm in Visual Studio, I have like a brain fart, for lack of a better term, and I start like I want to hit Control F2, and it doesn't work here. So then I can't remember what the real one is. So Control-R+R is a good handy refactoring shortcut. Thanks, Lohith. So every time we start this app up, we'll get a brand new fresh database. So we can add, remove, and do CRUD operations till our heart's content, and then restart the app and get a fresh new database again. So I love in-memory database. It's just really handy, really cool. The one drawback to in-memory database, okay, guys, listen up because this is important. You cannot, at this point in time, have relational data, okay? So we can't do something like a tree of customers or tree of employees that report to other employees, that type of thing. It has to be a flat data structure. So that's the only drawback right now. I don't know if they're going to add that in. I don't know if they did it on purpose. Maybe they don't think that that is a necessary feature for in-memory because they don't want people using it in production. Don't know why they restricted it that way, if it's a technical limitation, but all I know is we can't do it. So don't try it. It's just going to frustrate you. Use flat data structures only, but have fun with it because it's a really cool feature. I know I've said that a million times, but I really enjoy it that much because the type of work I do, I build a lot of demos. And this is more helpful to me than trying to set up a local DB or whatever. This is a lot easier and cleaner, a lot more shippable with your code. You can just push it up to GitHub, and there's no weird database stuff stuffed in your project. So anyway, enough talking that up. We should have the ability to add this record. We won't be able to see it right this second. I'm just going to do a quick build just to make sure nothing has gone awry, make sure the app boots up, make sure our server doesn't crash on some line of code I fat-fingered in here somewhere. So let's go ahead and give this a quick build for sanity's sake. And of course, yes, it helps you in testing. I'm leaving out the obvious, right? I'm talking about my usage of it, which is probably not the norm. And as Lohith says, like, this is especially helpful for testing because if you look at the docs, they clearly line out how you can do this. And you set up your context. You can test the service. You can see the database, and then you can come in and make sure that you're adding records and all that stuff. Yeah, yep. It's super helpful for this. You'll also find here that I'm using the same database name over and over again, but for testing, they suggest you add new databases for each test, which I agree, like how that can be helpful to make sure that your tests aren't conflicting with each other. But this documentation gets you up and running. As you can see, I followed it pretty closely to how they have it written out, and so far so good. So let's go and let's try to get this to show up in a controller. Let's try to pull this data out of Web API. So we got to go to our controllers, and we'll go to our sample controller. We're going to end up just replacing this. Not sure if I did correctly or something, but built core in the client shows a null reference exception when the DB context tries to discover DB sets. Are you doing this now, Peter, or is this something you worked on in the past? And I've got some more fall creatures flying in my face while I'm trying to talk. If you're coding along with me and you're hitting an error, that scares me. Okay. All right, let's see what happens with my version of it. Hopefully we won't hit it. Maybe no. Let's see what happens here. So we'll do, we need to inject this with dependency injection. Oh, you were trying to get it to work on the client side, on the front end. I'm crushing some fall flying creatures that keep trying to fly in my mouth while I talk. Sorry. So Peter was trying to get it to work on the client side to I don't know, open a gateway into another dimension, the nether zone or whatever it's called from Minecraft. It just sounds like such a bad idea. WebSQL is still available for Chrome, but it's possibly being deprecated, and you think that's a bad idea as well. Yeah. So dependency injection. I'm going to go back to docs just so I kind of know how to do this out of my head, but for folks that are new to this, I just want to show in docs where you can find it. It's in the configuring DB context under using with dependency injection. It should show how to do it in a controller, and there it is. Application code in ASP.NET Core. So you could essentially copy this out, change the values. So we'll use dependency injection at the top of our controller here. And again, I didn't call mine blogging contest. I called it context, called it customers. Customers context, control period, finds my model, and there's our context. And then we just need to copy this through. This is not my controller. This is going to be, it's in the wrong place. I need to move it inside the class or I'm going to get lots of red squigglies everywhere. This is going to be sample data controller. So a little copy paste development there, guys. Just a lot of magic behind the scenes of my code. You see how I do these things. Lots of copy and paste, but it works. So we've got our customer context. This should register now with our sample controller. Let's create a quick action. And let's do an HTTP GET. And we'll do an action here. So the URL will be named, or the URI will be named after the action. That's what we're doing here. And we'll call this public enumerable of. We're going to do customer. And I'm already thinking ahead. I have an issue here. Lohith's agreeing, like everybody copy paste codes, copy paste developers. So currently I have my customer model inside of the models folder on my server. And what I'm forgetting here is that we are in Blazor and we have the ability to use that customer on the client side. So this is going to actually get moved into the shared folder in a few minutes. And it's probably going to cause me to have to refactor some things. So just giving you guys a heads up, that's where my brain is at. I'm typing this out realizing that I'm going to have to use this on the client, the customer's model on the client. And I don't have it available in that project. So we'll fix that in a moment. So this is going to be called, what should we call this? Get customers? Or we can just call it customers. How about read customers? Just to make sure that we differentiate it between our post actions and stuff. We'll just call this read customers. I'm sure there's some best practices out there for this I'm not following, but that's not what this show's about, right? We're having fun with Blazor, or we will be in a minute. So we're setting up our server-side stuff so we can go tool around in Blazor and do some CRUD ops. So now we need to get data out of our database. Let's just return all records here. Return. We should be able to say underscore context. And again, bad practice is just dumping everything straight out to the user, but hey, we got one record right now. Let's not worry about the rest of this. Customers. Let's do to list. That should just dump all of our customers out, right? So we're returning IEnumerable of customer, throwing that out to the web. You can rename your controller to customers controller and just have get. Yeah, so Lohith's suggestion is you can just come up to the top of the controller here and just, you can call instead of calling them by action, you could just say get, put, post for all of your actions. There's probably better practices than putting things in by these silly names and stuff. So you would have a more discoverable API that way. So we'll just leave this here for now though. But yeah, that's a better suggestion to building something production ready. So I should be able to actually build this out. And the build went fine, which is great because Blazor's currently having some issues. And what we'll do is say the controller, the Web API, we should be able to hit that. I can't remember the path. So we'll go into fetch data and we'll borrow the path from here. It's API sample data. Previously we had weather forecasts, but we should have a read customers path. So we can come in here and say /API/sample data /read customers. Let's see if we get some data back. Oh, we have empty set here. All right, so let's go see why we're not getting anything back. Let's make sure we have, you know what, I don't think I spun up the server. I rebuilt it, but let's double check here. Let's actually do a full build and run. And we'll hit that endpoint again. Either that or I typed it in wrong. I typed in the Web API path wrong, but it should be read customers. Just make sure it's up and running. Make sure I got that path right while that's loading. Let's look at fetch data again. API, sample data. And I've got it running to where I can set a breakpoint. So there is no debugging on the client side yet, but we will be able to debug the server side if we need to. So API, sample data, read customers, and still nothing. So let's go to our sample data controller and let's break on read customers. Wow, it's laggy. Something's really churning away on my machine here. I'm hitting it, so either I'm not seeding it. Oh, I bet I know what it is. I'm not. So I'm setting up the context. I bet what it is, I don't have my configuration set up. So I'm not calling out to the right database. No, because that's actually set up in startup CS. So Blazor demos the database name, adding a customer, saving changes. So why do I have no data in my database? So I've got a breakpoint under sample context, customers. We don't have anything in it. Empty, no results. So my seeding is not working for some reason. So let's take a look back at startup CS. Let's double check here. We'll set another breakpoint. Let's continue. We'll go ahead and stop this guy and restart him. See if we're actually hitting our seed database function here. We should be. So we have in our context customers, no results. So for some reason, we're not committing our customer to the database. So let's see, how can we double check this? I haven't saved yet. Oh, the context save changes hasn't fired yet. Let's see if we can go in one more level deep. There we go. Count is 1. So we do have our customer in there. Yeah, so we do have our customer in there. So once it saves, it is in there. Oh, no. Yeah, we do. There it is. So we have one customer in the database. Let's see. Not sure why. Because you're newing up a context rather than using the one from the DI scope. That could possibly be it. Let's see. I'm using the same options. I'm using a new context, though. So let's try... I know I've done this here before, though, so I'm kind of confused. Yeah, I gave it the same database name. So database name is Blazor demo. So I need to get the database from the service collection, is what's being suggested by Loheath and Peter Morse. Instead of newing up a context in the seeding block. Let's see. So instead of newing one up here, let's get it from dependency injection here. Let's see. How should we do this? Services, add. I'm trying to think how would we pull this out right here? Whoops. I didn't mean to continue playing. We'll go ahead and stop this guy. Gosh, I'm pretty sure I've done this. Thank you, Application Insights. I'm pretty sure I've done it this way before. So I'm kind of confused. And DB context. Let's... So let's try... let's go ahead and just pass this through. I'm just going to try to keep this clean. We'll just go ahead and pass the service collection along. And then let's go here. Figure out how do we pull this guy out of here. I haven't done this for a while. Store the services in the startup class. This seems overly complex. I know I've done this before without having to do all of this. So that's why I'm a little confused. I know I've done this without having to resolve that same instance. Believe I did it with the same options before, and because it has the same database name, services get service. No, I don't have a get service. Interesting. I wonder if something's changed with in-memory DB, because I know I've set these up before. I don't know where that project is off the top of my head, and I don't want to dig for it because in its constructor. Or on the method. I don't quite know where you're telling me to look for that. As a test, the controller creates the data and there is none. Read the line above. It's hard to tell what you're actually trying to help me with. Let's see. So, gosh, this is a pain. I know I've done this before. So I'm trying to remember exactly what I did. I may have done it. I wonder if I did it in the configure section. So let me think through this for a second. Store the service as static in startup CS. So in your controller method, check there is no data. If so, then create and save. All right, let me check docs here. Seeding data. Let's see. On model creating. I can do it in on model creating. Let's go to DB context. Where are you? Sample data, customer context. What's this? Overrides. On model creating, I could do it in here. I could see data inside here. So we could do EF code migrations. I was trying to keep this as simple as possible, and these things are great for building large-scale apps, but on model creating would be able to do it. Let's see. I'm trying to remember how to use this on model creating thing. I'm really beating myself up because I know I've done it the way that I tried to do it before, and there's some little thing missing. So model builder, let's try it this way. Model builder dot entity. Whoops. Need to open that up. Then we give the type customer. Has data. And then we can specify our data here. New customer. And then I'll go back and copy my code. This will probably do it. And this is probably the right way to do it, because this is, I mean, if you were using pure SQL, this is how you would do it. But I kind of like to wing it and throw it in here because I can do some other stuff with it later. But we'll go ahead and comment this out for now. Let's see if we can get this going for today's show, and then I might follow up next week and see when I get some time on my own to figure out why it didn't work. It's kind of hacky, but it's a good way to get some demos built fast. So let's give this a try. See if our breakpoints hit. Did not break. So sample data control or customer context. Boy, when debugging is enabled and the live streaming software is going, it really takes a hit to my system. This is kind of laggy and slow here. Let's see. Data controller. Oh, it took out my breakpoint. That's why it's not working. Let's double check this guy here. Actually, let's see if I can do read customer. There we go. Customers. No results. Ah! No results. I just issued my request to the endpoint and it failed yet again. Nothing, no data. In-memory DB is not being nice today. Let's stop, or let's retry it because I just ran it. Yeah, I'm asking for it. It's not coming through. So I'm not hitting my startup, damn it, DB context, shut down IIS Express. Let's try that. Let's make sure this guy's dead. Go for it. Let's make sure this hits. This is aggravating. I've done this a million times. I've got other demos out on the web that I know I've used this. Error occurred. Oh, now I've really done it. Now I've got my process tied up because I killed IIS Express. There we go. So let's see if on-model creating even fires. Read customers. And I'm not getting any breakpoints. There we go. On-model creating works. Continue. So that should have created my customer, but it did not. Or did I forget to save it? Is that what I did wrong? I didn't save it. Has data. Alternatively, you can use context database ensure created to create a new database containing the seed data. For an example, when using the in-memory provider. Note that if the database already exists, ensure created will neither update the schema or seed the database. Okay, let's try this. We've got Bruno's got an idea here. And I think he's asking to do it outside of this. So we'll save this guy idea for later. Let's go back. I know this is one proper way of doing it, but we should be able to do it here too. See if I can resolve it this way. So it will be, let's do var services.resolve. That is not on the iService collection. So folks want to play too. I don't know if I can do it that quickly. Let me look for something for just a second. I think I remember where I may have done this before. So let's go into, let me look in my previous projects. It's kind of ironic. I'm trying to do this very kind of off the hip and quick, and I probably could have had a SQL Server set up by now and everything working with a full SQL Server. So I've got a project in here for, it wasn't in Visual Studio Toolbox. When did I do this? It wasn't .NET Conf, it was trying to remember the name of the project I used this in last time. Yeah, this is a ASP.NET hosted application project, so it's not a client project. I did it with virtualization. The Telerik virtualization stuff is really cool, and I know I've done it with that before. I don't remember where I stored the project, though. So let's see. I've got, it's not tag helpers. Telerik MVC app. See if I've got it in this guy. No, this is not it. Okay, let's try from iService provider. I think I'm losing the context of where we need to do this at. This is really annoying. I've done this a million times. Like I said, I've used this in quite a few demos I've done. Speaking of that, let's try GitHub. Oops. See if I have this on my GitHub. I have a virtualization demo that I know I've used this in. Search. On, I don't want all GitHub, I just want mine. In this repository, all of GitHub. I don't know how to search just my projects. Let's see. Let's do me. And then let's see if I have my previous thing up here. Tag helper dashboard. It's not that one. It's not that one. Sorry if this is painful. I'm looking through where I've used this before. It's not my quick start samples. May not be on GitHub. I do a lot of demos that don't make it to the web because they're for internal purposes. Let's see. Let me see if I have it in my drop-down tree demo. That one has a full Northwind DB context. So that's not it. That one actually has a real database. So in-memory DB is causing me issues. Of all things, I didn't expect that. Build provider service git service. I think that might be it. Git service. There we go. Thank you, Bruno. Let's see if this does it. Git service, and we want our, let's see what overloads we have. Customer context. I will review this after the show too and figure out what's causing this issue because I know this works. It's very frustrating. Context, I don't have to have my options anymore. Let's try it that way. Context add. There, that seemed to work. Thanks, Bruno. Let's give this a shot. Let's do a full debug in case we need to hit that again. Make sure I don't have it open somewhere else. Do not. So it's interesting we have to resolve that instance and add it there. I know I've done this just by doing it on the same database before, because it shouldn't clear out the database unless you start, nope, be damned, it is still not in there. Wow. So it's not saving, or it's not pulling it out of the same database. So we have the same exact customer context. We're using in-memory database options with this option name. You need to inject the service provider in the startup constructor. So on startup, inject the service provider there. Okay. I think we've gone down a rabbit hole here. So let's scratch in-memory database provider for now. Let's do a real database, which this is a pain. This is not what I wanted to do. And I guess maybe a little prep next time might help. Let's do... This is so frustrating to me. I'm mad because I know I've done it. I hate having done something before and it not work. I wouldn't have jumped through so many hoops to do this myself. And know it was something that I set up that was terribly easy to do, and it just worked. I didn't spend hours on end trying to figure out how to get data in and out of the in-memory database. So let's just use, let's set up, crud. I don't know if I should just ditch this whole thing or not. Trying to figure out how I could search through my stuff here and find it. I know I've got a sample of it. Wonder if I have it in here. All right, let's try this project out. I believe I've used it in this project before. No, it's not the doc's fault, because I'm not using it for what it's supposed to be used for. I'm not using it for testing. Kind of just trying to use it for my own like lack of wanting to use SQL. Let's see. So I used it in here, but I don't have it wired up. So I was going to use it, and I never got that far. All right, let's cover this next week. Let's not hang up on this too much. We can dig through this project a little bit and have some fun with it. This is a demo app that I was working on. Let's hope this actually runs. This is an older version of Blazor. I probably shouldn't have started with debugging because it's not going to be real useful. So this is something I was working on. This does not have a full round trip to a database either yet, so I stopped short of implementing it there as well. And I'm going to accidentally click on all kinds of windows now because I'm frustrated with in-memory database. I'm going to close this guy out. It's just annoying me. I'll figure this out, and we'll cover it next week. For the meantime, let's take a look at this other project I was working on. I hope to add it here as well. Right now, I'm just dumping out data to it. It's called Space Bank. So I was building out a banking application. I was testing out routing in here. So you're able to jump between two different accounts. Right now you can only see the account number changing. But routing is really cool. If you haven't checked out routing yet, this is actually something that works. We can kind of play with this for a minute, and then I will probably end the show, go back, figure this guy out, and start a new show possibly tomorrow or next week. I don't know why in-memory database give me such a bunch of trouble. It's really making me upset. So let's see. Let's close out some of these windows. So in this app, what I was playing with was the ability to do routing and use the routing to pull records out of the database, which don't have a database yet, but I've got some API calls. So on this app, I'm kind of mimicking like a banking app. So that'd be a really cool demo to have for Blazor, and I might hack on this later and release it as a GitHub project. What do we got here? Let's see. How to set up in-memory database for ASP.NET Core. DB model. DB set. Configure services. Use in-memory database. Seeding with test data on startup. So get service, application services, context. That's pretty much what I did. This actually looks like it may be an older version too, which I'm kind of suspect that maybe something has changed recently with it. And I'm not blaming the tool instead of myself. It's just I noticed in here, in this example, let me see if this has a date on it. When was this published? 2016. So this is really old. And there's been changes to in-memory database since then. What kind of tips me off to that is the fact that in the options, there's no database name specified here in the options. And I know that's something that was required. So I've still got that project, even though I closed it, I saved it. Let's go back and take a look real quick. I'll give this one more shot. If it doesn't work, I don't want to hang on this forever. I think we've been hacking at it for over an hour. If I thought it was going to fail this hard, I wouldn't have tried it live on the show. And I apparently suggest doing it in program instead of startup.cs. Yeah, that changed in 2.0. Make sure I got the right thing up here. So options, database name. Now I'm getting red squigglies here. What did I delete that caused that to happen? Oh, I remember now. This should be in-memory database. Use in-memory database. Let's borrow their seed thing here. So they're just jumping in and grabbing the context after. Let me close this other project out. So they grab the context right there, which we tried to do before. Service API context. That must be what they called it. Oh, this is app. Ah. So this goes in here, app. That's where we need to grab it. That may be the deciding factor there. Private static void. Just go ahead and copy this. I deleted the other one out, so we'll do this again. Whoops. Copy paste here, add test data, and pass in the context. And we got to get our context right, so we'll say customer context. Give this guy a run, see if this works. So we got to create a new customer and shorthand this guy. ID equals 1. First name. Mr. Meeseeks is sad, and I'm sad that I didn't get this right the first time. I swear something's changed though. Total orders. So we have a customer. It's a little more longhand way of doing it, but it works. Customers. And then we just need to add it. Oh, I already added it. Save changes. All right, so we add the database context to the service collection. We're going to go ahead and resolve it in the app configure section, and then we will seed it, and hopefully we will get it in our controller this time. So let's go ahead and give this a run. I'm going to run it without debugging. I think this is going to work. I'm crossing my fingers. And oh, cannot resolve scope from root provider. It's working in program.cs. So this is actually unable to resolve the service for some reason. Registering the DB context, get service doesn't work. So Scott has a working way of doing this. So this is service provider, get service, DB context, instru created, save changes. Let's give this a shot. Thanks, Scott. Let's. You said this works for you. Let's hope it works for me as well. I think it will. Didn't work in startup. I'm going to find that project sometime soon, and I'm going to figure out why this didn't work, and I'm going to be very unhappy. It's why I thought it worked and it doesn't. Whoop. Am I pasting this in wrong? Let's see. Web host builder. So we're doing it. Yeah, I know this is not the way I did it before. I realize this works, Scott. That's really awesome. Thank you so much. What's going on here? Dependency injection. We need our customer's context. So you were using identity. Let's do new. I already got this somewhere else, so I can just grab it. It's a little more verbose, but we'll take it. There's another way to do this. I know there's another way to do this. Oops. So build web host. It's changed now. Create web host. I think this has changed too in different versions of .NET. Let's hope this works. Let's take this out. I'm just creating a big hot mess now. Live coding gone wrong, guys. Live coding gone wrong. Okay. Give this one a run. Oh, I got build errors. What'd I forget? Add test data. I took that out. And I don't need to resolve that anymore. Try another build. Success. Rerun. You know it's been a good day when you've got a billion tabs open. Success! Thank you, Scott. That is awesome. I don't remember having to do that before. So, not saying that I remember exactly how it was done before, but I'm pretty darn sure I did not have to do that. So, being live bites me in the rear, but Scott's figured it out. Thank you, Scott. So now we can continue with our project. Changed in 2.0, according to Sean's post. I don't know if it makes a difference. Something's changed. I need to find my old project so I can reference to what it is I did before. I know I did it simply inline before, right after. It was either in configure services or configure, like right after I registered it. I seeded it. I had just a simple routine in there, and then I was able to just have fun with my database and not have to worry about like resetting it and stuff afterwards. So the whole point of in-memory database is so we don't have to go through a bunch of gyrations. Every time we want to clear the database out and restore it to a fresh state, we just reboot the app and get a brand new database back. So now we have that. Now we have a starting point. So we've got the ability to read. Let's go to Blazor and read some data. So again, I mentioned this before a long time ago when we first started. I'm kind of going off of this weather forecast sample. And when I started this whole thing up, I did a fancy control period and added a customer model to my models folder. This is not where I want it. I actually want it here in the shared project. So I'm going to drag and drop it. It's going to really hose things up if I don't change some stuff though. Instead of StateHasChanged server namespace, we want StateHasChanged shared namespace. Save that. This is going to haunt us in the rest of our project. I need to delete this and build, and I'll find all the bugs. There should be a lot. Unless, maybe not, because the shared, nope, there it is. Ambiguous. I don't know why it's coming up as ambiguous, but let's do, let's try to build this project first. Let's make sure, rebuild the server project. All right, customer could not be found because it is in shared now. Because we're going to need to consume this guy on the client. So, there's one problem solved. There's the other. Successfully moved customer from our models folder on our server project to our shared project. So now we can come into our client, and we have fetch data. Let's go ahead and clone this guy. Let's do some more copy paste dev. Yay, copy paste dev. So instead of fetch data, we'll call it fetch customers. Then we can come in here and hack away. Fetch customers. So now we have a fetch customers component, which I just copied fetch data into a brand new component. We're going to do HTTP. We're going to change the names of some of these things. Let's do get async of customer, array of customers. So we're calling into HTTP get. We're doing a get JSON async. We're grabbing a list of customers from our read customers endpoint. And then we need to, where are we getting, this is going to be a customers collection here, or array. And we'll change this one. We'll do the refactoring tools work in here? I don't think they work in Razor, which kind of sucks. So you can't just go in and do, what was it again? Control R, rename. Maybe it does work. Oh, they do work inside here. That's nice. I didn't realize that did the trick. And then we can say Control RR here, say customer. And then we'll have some different properties this time. So we are simply just making changes to the given example from the file new project experience. So we want company name. We just grab all of our properties out here. Customer first name, customer last name. And I think I had one more property. What was it? Total orders. So we'll grab all of those. Then we can reset our header. Somebody needs to make a really nice data grid for Blazor. I work for Progress Telerik, so I'm kind of being snarky. I'm saying we need to make that, but I'm not the guy that makes that decision. I'm just the guy that complains that we haven't made that decision yet. So hopefully Blazor gets some love from us sometime soon. So we can say ID, because nobody wants to make grids this way. Yes, exactly what I'm saying. It's something we're looking at. So Progress Telerik is looking at Blazor very much, very often, but we don't have anything to announce yet. We don't have any official statement on what we're doing with it. All I can say is we're looking at the fact that we have support for other .NET things, and it would be a good fit for us, but it's a little new to know whether or not people are that interested in it, or it's experimental, so it may or may not see the light of day. The fact that there is a release coming for ASP.NET 3.0 in the way of SignalR and the server-side Blazor stuff, known as Razor components, helps, but it still doesn't drive a decision to make anything. I'm just counting through my properties here. I've got 5 properties I'm supporting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have all of my things in here. So while I'm talking here, I can tell you if you're interested in having Blazor supported by Telerik, go to feedback.telerik.com. Scroll down. Literally, you can select any of these. It doesn't really matter because we're going to do a search, and you can say Blazor, and it will search all of those various things and vote this up. Vote this up This will help us know that you guys want Telerik UI components for Blazor. So feedback.telerik.com, click anywhere in order to get your search box going, and just search for Blazor and vote up that thing. So that'll tell us, go make it, we'll buy it. We love you, Telerik. I do. I used Telerik components for 6 years while I was a professional developer before changing to a developer advocate for Telerik. So I bought plenty of Telerik stuff. So much so that they hired me. Yay! Let's change this from weather forecast to customers. So sorry for the tangent, but I love my job. And the company is amazing. So let's see. So now we should actually have a working thing, even though it'll only have one record. We're actually getting data from our in-memory database now. Thanks to Scott Saber. Hope I'm saying your last name right. Thank you again. Oh, I don't have a route or I don't have a menu item set up for it. How did I get the search box up on that Telerik page? Click on any of the products. So when you search, it'll search across all the products. You could click on ASP.NET Core if you wanted to, but once you search, it really doesn't matter. It'll find the existing item, and then you can vote it up. Thanks for doing that, Bruno, or Peter, sorry. Let's do the route directly. So it is fetch customers. And I did something wrong. So I probably named it wrong. It looks like. Do I have a typo here? Fetch customers. There we go. Yeah, I typed it wrong. Or I misspelled something. F-E-T-C-H customers. C-U-S-T-O-M-E-R-S. I typed it wrong when I put it in manually in the URL. And there's our data with a stray bracket floating around. I don't know if I typed it in or copied it from somewhere. What did I just do? No, I don't want to. Whatever that was, I don't want to do it. I clicked something on my mouse. I don't know what that pop-up was. All right, so we're fetching data. Go back and refresh. I know that's not a big deal, but I want to make sure I didn't break something in erasing it. Let's make sure we have a working page still. Yay. All right. Let's add another tab on the side here. This is actually really easy to do. We can come into our shared components, and in our nav menu, we can just make a copy here. Control D to duplicate. This is copy paste programming at its finest today. We're going to do, instead of fetch data, we'll just say list customers. And then we need, on the nav link, we just change the href to the component name or the route name. And now, oh, that's still the old question. Peter, were you able to find that that record and upvote it on feedback.telerik.com? Just checking back to make sure that it worked out for you. So I'm just refreshing here to make sure I got my new tab on the side so I can come back and forth. So I can get my customers. So let's look at adding a new record. So this should be fun. Let's create, let's see, let me help Peter here real quick. This stuff's really important to me. So feedback.telerik.com. Scroll down to DevTools. Any of these items, Kendo UI for jQuery is fine. because when you type in here Blazor, it will search the entire database for people's suggestions, and then you can just vote up here. You may need to create an account to vote that up, but once you're in, you can vote it up there. So hopefully that helps you find it. Again, appreciate that. It looks like I think that number might have gone up as we were in here. So a couple of you might have gone in and voted it up. Thank you. Awesome stuff. I hope we get those built out. Again, I can't guarantee or announce anything here. I know we're looking at it. That's all I can say. So we have the ability to display our customers. We need to write a new record to our customers. All right. Just voted it up. Giving feedback on the feedback page needs a certain... Yeah, I don't know why you have to drill into one of the items to do the search, but when you do the search, it searches everything anyway. They might as well just put it on the home page of feedback. Let's see. So let's create a new page. Add new... What do you guys feel about adding new CS/HTML pages in Blazor? There's ways to do it through new item. And it just seems like I don't know, it seems clunky. You can do razor page. And we'll do it this way. I'll show you what I mean. Let's do create customer. And then I hit enter. What do I have open that keeps changing? Program CS is... I don't know what's hitting program CS that's making changes, but I'll close that. But see, it adds all this garbage at the top that I don't need. I guess it's making a razor page. Create customer model. I don't need all that garbage. Use Bionic. Okay, I need to check into Bionic more, Bruno. That's a definite. Bionic, generate page. My page name will do that. And probably do it better, I'm sure. Then I'd have to go to the command line. You need to create a context menu for Bionic to give me all the Bionic things in here too. I know it's a command line tool. I'm being silly. I know. I don't know why I hate the command line so much, because I used it for years and years and years. And then, oh, see, this is the other annoying part. It created a CS file I don't need. So now I got to go and delete this thing. All right, so create customer page and a route. I used the command line forever, and I fought it hard in dropping mouse pads on the floor. I always fought against using anything but the command line. I know it inside and out. Like, I know all my commands on the command line. But then Windows finally got to be mainstream, and I just gave up. And it's been a while since I've revisited the console. Oh, now you're talking about Docker. I don't even want to get into Docker. You get into CI/CD and all the DevOps stuff, and I am not a DevOps guy. Maybe that's why I have console fatigue. Let's see. We'll call the page create customer. And then we need to have some items on here. Let's see. We'll do some simple inputs. So Razor does this weird thing sometimes where it's not giving me an exception has occurred. Okay, I guess that was really not what I expected. So we can do input. It's not seeing it as valid HTML or something. I can't remember why it does this. Just double check, make sure I've got everything written the way it's supposed to be written. Yeah, see the first item Let's try div. It's not highlighting correctly. I think it had to do with the way I created it. Let me close it out, come back. There it is. That was the other weird thing that it does. So adding a CS HTML file that way is just a giant pain because of what you just saw. So we'll, in our div, we'll probably need like a bootstrappy grid thing around this in a minute, but so we need a text box where we can enter. We need, they don't have any form demos on the file new project thing. We should at least have one type of like a input form. We need a label, and let's just say first name. There. This will be our first name text box. We'll do the same thing again. Let's come back and create another tab in our UI and call it create customer, because it has a create customer route. Say new customer. And then our application is still running here. So we'll just refresh this page. It should do the trick. Hey, Seth Rogen is in the house. It's Brendan, or Brendanus from the Dev Chatter stream. Thanks for coming over, Brendan. Glad to have you on the chat room. I didn't get to check out, or I did check out your latest show earlier today. It said hi from DevReach. Got sidetracked. Then we spent an hour trying to figure out why the in-memory database does not want to seed from where I thought it should seed before. So if you missed all that fun, just go back through the first hour of the show and watch me be embarrassed. But the chat room figured it out for me. So stream needs some category and tags. We'll have to revisit that after the show. In-memory database is fun. Yes, for sure. I also need to get my on-screen chat display for my YouTube channel, which I'm still trying to set up, and YouTube is being a pain, and it's not been fun. So for Brendan and anybody else that is catching up on the stream, we have we're doing an in-memory database, and we're trying to do some CRUD ops with Blazor. So we're listing out our customers. I just built a new customer form. You can see how beautiful and awesome it is. This is all I have for now. We're going to make some new fields in there in just a moment. I've already got so many tabs that I need to do a little tab bankruptcy. So I'm going to do close all documents, and we'll start back over from create customer, where I just added a label and a text box. So we need to add a couple more of these guys. I'll get this all bootstrappy here in a few minutes, but for now I'm just going to copy paste. And we've got a few fields that we're going to add, and we're going to bind those to some data and push that back into our database. So I need to add some tags or categories. Yeah, those are all really good suggestions. I know I've got those set up somewhere, and maybe I didn't save it to the right place, Brendan. So first name, last name. Let's see, what other properties did I have? We have under customer, first name, last name, company name, total orders. First name, last name, company name, total orders. And then I can change the type on this text box to be, whoa. Somehow I got a Node.js interactive window. I don't know what I fat fingered to get that beautiful thing. Want image, number, type number. So this will give us a numeric input. Let's go back and double check this guy real quick. So we should have 4 text boxes, and the layout may be a little wonky right now because, yeah, it's not the prettiest thing in the world. I need to come back and add some Bootstrap classes here. I can't remember what they are off the top of my head. We'll look those up in a minute. But at least setting the HTML5 attribute for text input helps. So we at least have that much. My main concern here is getting some data in and out right now. We'll make this look pretty in just a minute. Yes, those are some freaking awesome design skills, aren't they? I really miss using Foundation. Like, everybody embedded Bootstrap in literally everything web that ever existed. And I don't get the opportunity to use Foundation much anymore, which is what I normally used. Bootstrap has just kind of taken over, and to me, Bootstrap is the and I can't say I'm the guy that came up with this term, but I love it so much I use it every time I talk about Bootstrap. And the idea is that Bootstrap is the Comic Sans of the web. It's such a beautiful thing, isn't it? So we'll make this look pretty here in a few minutes. Let's get some data going on, though. Let's do functions. Bootstrap is the tables of CSS. No, it's the Comic Sans of the web. It's that wonderful. Let's see. So when we type data in these boxes, you know, I don't think I've ever actually done this before. Let's go ahead and just bind these. We need to have some fields, so we need some backing fields here. A lot of these are going to be strings. Last name, first name, last name, company name, and then our last one's an int. So I wanted to make this as hard on myself as possible. I had to throw something besides a string in there. So we've got first name, last name, company name, total orders. Let's see here. Bind first name. So at the opening of the show, I talked about the stuff that they're working on for 070 that's in the video on the ASP.NET Core community stand-up this week. Make sure you guys check that out later this weekend or something if you haven't seen it already. The stuff that Steve Sanderson is working on is really going to make controls and components very easy to do in Blazor. I mean, it's really cool stuff. I can't even begin to try to explain it without the bits. And I don't know if you're witnessing this or not, but IntelliSense is being a pain too. It's not completing for me. But there we go. We should be able, we should be binding those values. And then we should be able to pick those up. And we need a submit button of some kind here. And again, this is the most beautiful, beautiful form ever. We're going to put a pretty old button on there. And we need to give this button text, let's say submit. And then we need to on-click event. Because what we're going to do is when we click the button, we want to be able to send a new record to our database. And then let's call that handle click. Since it's the only button on our form, that should be good enough to explain what we're handling. Handle click. There we go. IntelliSense helped me that time. Now, we haven't done any... we haven't done anything but fetch data from an endpoint so far. So if we look back at fetch customer, we're doing HTTP get JSON async, and we're pulling back a customer, list of customers. So let's go and borrow some code again. For Brendan just joining us, this is the copy paste coding hour. So we're I'm gonna paste that in the completely wrong place, but we're doing a lot of copy paste coding today. We're gonna inject an HTTP client, and then we'll just go ahead and borrow this as well. It's gonna be pretty similar. Instead of getting customers, we're actually, and this is still gonna be in await, I believe. So we'll probably have to change this to an async. Async void handle click. Stack Overflow driven programming. We're borderline doing that today. If you weren't here for the first hour, that was the Stack Overflow programming hour. Let's see. We need a customer. So we need here. I'll actually type out some code using state has changed. We are on project 4, shared. So that should get us our customer. Yay, I successfully typed code without copying and pasting. So we're going to, instead of get JSON async and getting a customer back, we're actually going to do a post async. Post JSON async. And we don't have an endpoint yet. So we haven't written an endpoint to do this, and I'm getting squigglies because let's see, it's not typed, I believe. No, it is typed. I need to pass another parameter. So string and then object. So we're going to have an object there. We don't have the object yet, so that's why we get the squigglies. But we don't have an endpoint either. So we could really make our lives a nightmare and do that. But we're going to put our URL here and our object in here in a minute. Let's go ahead and create the Web API endpoint. So in our server project, under controllers, data sample data controller, we're just still hacking away at that guy. We can kind of hide these. We're not using these anymore. These are the weather forecast samples that come with Blazor. And we have our get action. We need a post action. So we'll say HTTP post. And again, we'll just use the action name of the actual action itself. We'll say public. Trying to remember if these are just void. It's been a little while since I've created an API. We'll do void. And we'll say create customer. And this is actually going to accept a customer. So we need to do a type of customer. And we'll let IntelliSense just finish it for us and call it customer. Next thing we need to do is get our DB context. And then we're going to, on our customers, add that new customer. We're doing all sorts of validation here. I'm kidding, we're not doing any validation yet. And then we will save our changes. Save changes to customer. Oops, we don't need that. It's just save changes. So that should save our changes, persist our data back to the database. This should be good enough for now, to at least get us up and running. Now we need to add that URL endpoint, we called it create customer, and we need to pass it some data. So we're expecting a customer here. Reformat that. I hate when Visual Studio formats it like this. I like it indented here. Let's do a new, we need to say customer. New customer. And we'll just map these values in. So we'll say first name. Trying to remember if I could do it this way or not. No, it's going to make me do the equals. First name is first name. Sometimes when you map objects, you can leave out the equal sign. I was hoping it was going to let me be lazy, but I saw the red squigglies ahead of time there. It wasn't letting me do it. When you do a select, it will let you do that. When you do some mappings with link, you can actually be lazy enough where you don't have to type this stuff all in. Oops, that was company name. So we'll just map these out and return that object. I could have put all that code inside here, but we'll just do it this way for now. So we're going to post that object back to our database, and we'll let it slide like this for now. We'll revisit our listing page to see if that actually persisted data or not. Let's do a rebuild because we made changes to our server app. I want to make sure that server gets rebuilt. So all the build processes are running and passing. Now we can go back to our app, refresh our beautiful page. So we'll make that look nice next, I think. So now we have our create customer page. Let's look at list customers again. We only have our one item in here. Brendan, I know you just joined us. Mr. Meeseeks is with us today. So he joined me from DevUp. He's watching the demo fails. Maybe that's why he's still here. Because you know, Meeseeks don't disappear until they've accomplished their task. And he's seen a lot of fail today. So we're going to add a new customer to this list of customers. And we just wrote the code for it. Let's see if it works. Since Seth Rogen is here with us, Seth will be our new customer. And I think his company name is DevChatter. I don't know how many orders he has. We'll give him 2. Let's hit submit. We don't have anything to kind of signify that we've actually added the customer. Let's go back and see. No, we don't have any new customers. It did not work. So let's see what happened. We cannot debug on the client side with Blazor. So what we have to do is we're going to go back to our endpoint here. Let's make sure this is actually being hit. So we have create customer. We'll do a little fact checking here and say API sample data, read customer. That's on our fetch customers. Create customer is API sample data, create customer. Let's create customer, so it's not plural. We're passing this customer in when we click on the submit button. All right, so let's see what is happening when we do that. Let's see if we can get the breakpoint going here. Let's submit. And I didn't see my breakpoint hit. So we're not even hitting the action. So it's an HTTP post. So create customer is post JSON async. The API path is correct. All right, so we need to debug a little further since we're not hitting our controller. So what we can do is another little Telerik favorite of mine. We'll pull up Fiddler. And Fiddler will tell us if we're making this post correctly or not. So if we don't see it coming across the wire, we know that our button isn't working. So let's hit submit. And we can see API, sample data, create customer works. What is in it though? I'm not seeing the customer come through. Oh, there it is. It's in here. Customer ID 0, first name, last name, company name, total orders. All right, interesting. So we're not hitting our endpoint. We're calling it. We're successfully calling create customer. But we're not actually breaking. So our web server's not hitting it for some reason. Why is this? We're looking for a customer here. Maybe our data binding's not picking that up for some reason. Let's try a different approach here. Let's try to bind every single value in. Maybe this will help. First name, and we need string. First name, string, last name. I don't know why it would need us to do this, but we'll just double check. Company name, total orders, and we'll go ahead and add customer ID as well. I don't know if casing is going to matter. And we'll not even actually add this for now. Let's comment this out. I just want to make sure we're hitting this breakpoint. This is very odd. This hasn't been my day today. Let's just put some non-op type thing in here. Let's just say I just want something to break on. I don't know if we're even going to hit this. Let's just do this. This actually will fail if we run it. So we'll just say new customer. Let's just throw an empty customer in there, let it fail if it hits this at all. Kind of trying to figure out why it's not hitting that breakpoint or that endpoint at all. I need to rebuild too. So rebuild this. Oh, you know what? I know why it's not hitting the breakpoint. It just hit me. Let's go back. Let's undo this madness. I was not running in debug mode. So you have to actually be running in debug mode. So, oh, just hit a build error. Let's hit no. So with Blazor, there is no client-side debugging right now. So I have a habit of hitting Control F5 just to skip around debugging, because it's not going to do anything on the client anyway. But I'm trying to debug on the server, which does work. And I forgot to turn on debugging. So I'm not going to hit a breakpoint if I'm not debugging. So let this get up and running again. And boy, this really gets bogged down. There we go. I have my breakpoint up. My app is up and running. I can say new customer. say Seth Rogen. That joke never gets old, Brendan. Never gets old. Dev chatter. Total orders don't really matter. Submit. It does break, so it is hitting the endpoint. So it is not data binding, however. So our customer is not getting through. That's why we don't have a new customer added. I'm not quite certain why it's doing that. So this could be, we're getting an unhandled exception. Continue. So we're setting up the form right, it looks like. Our request went through, which looked like it's correct. Customer ID, first name, last name, company name, total orders. All that looks like it's going through okay, but we're not binding the data back right. So yes, that's exactly where I was heading. Good suggestions coming in. These are right along the lines of what I was thinking. So with Web API, what we should do probably is tell it where the data is coming from. So we can say from body, because it's actually posting from the body. And that's where our data is going to be found. We should bind to that. Let's see if that simple attribute does the trick for us. If that doesn't work, we'll go into this a little deeper, but I think that might do the trick. So let's give this guy a shot again. New customer. Do 2 orders. Submit. I forgot to put my breakpoint on. Item has the same key. So that actually looked either like it worked. So that came through from body was the right thing. It didn't add it, however, because it said it already had a customer by that ID, which I'm not sure. I may have double clicked. Let's go back and see. No, it didn't add it at all. This one already has an ID of 1. So let's see. Why isn't it creating? Yeah, it's working now. The problem is with Entity Framework. So we're doing an add. We're saying add a customer. We're not passing in an ID, so it's not automatically assigning an ID. Yeah, I don't have the schema set up right, is what it is. So I need to come into my Solution Explorer. Just for the chat room here. And is AutoInk supported in memory? I believe it is. If you guys know why I get the script documents thing that pops up while I'm running, please let me know. It's very annoying, and not everybody gets this. And it just scrolls so far down the screen that it's absolutely nuts, and I have to find the top of it and close it every time. If you guys know what that is, let me know, because I don't, and I think it's a pain in the butt. So let's stop debugging. And we need to add to the schema or to the model, which this is something new to me. So we're sharing the customer across the server and client side, because this is a Blazor project. We don't have the concept of JSON, what do you call it? JSON object, a Java script object on the client side. We actually have our same class being used on the server and the client. So when we have Entity Framework properties on it, or attributes, if we add it here, don't know what that does for our client side. let's see. I don't even remember what that attribute is. It's any framework ID attributes. Don't do it on the customer class. Is it on? We do it in the context. You have to set it up in here. Yeah. I'm trying to remember how to set up that mapping. Let's see, we have our data open here, creating a model. Keys, there we go. We don't want to use data annotations. We want to use the model builder. On model creating. So we want to do an override on model creating. That'll generate for us. And then we'll do the model builder. Oops. Let me go back. I'm just going to paste this, copy and paste this for reference, so I don't have to keep jumping back and forth. And we'll do customer has key. In our case, is going to be customer ID. Let's see if this does the trick. So I think that alone might be enough to set our primary key. And I don't think we have to do anything to generate a value. Yeah, I think this will take care of it for us. Let's double check. Let's do rebuild. Yeah, we want to put it on model creating. Thanks, Lohith. We want to put it on model creating because we don't want to pollute our customer that's being shared on the client and the server with a bunch of attributes that don't belong on the client. So we put them in the DB context instead. And whoops, clicked on the wrong one. Customer's context. We do it in here. We have entity customer, and we do has key here. So we don't muddy that up. So now we should be able to come back and run this again. And hopefully this adds or auto increments the ID for us, so it doesn't blow up with that record already exists, because it keeps trying to insert an ID of 0 over and over again. So let's see, let's go list customer, make sure we haven't added anything new. We have not. This Mr. Meeseeks has an ID of 1. Let's do a new customer. I don't know if Brendan's still here, but I'm going to keep making fun of him looking like Joe Rogan, or Seth Rogen. So we'll say Seth Rogen, dev chatter. And poor Brendan looks nothing like Seth Rogen until you look at him on his stream. For some reason, his stream, you're just like, that's Seth Rogen streaming some coding. So I align instead of indenting code. Yeah, I like my dots to line up. And still, an item has the same key, key 1. Why is it doing this to me? This is not my day. So customer ID is 1. It keeps defaulting to 1 and trying to insert 1 in there. Let's see. What do we have to do to make this value generated never, value generated on add? I wonder if that will work. I don't remember having to go through so much work on this. Like, when did Entity Framework get to be such a pain? I don't think it's because I'm using the in-memory database either. I don't know. Today is not the day for in-memory database for me. And this doesn't work either. Key builders not contain a definition. If you just call it on ID instead of Oh, I see what you're saying. So letting the... Well, we're saying has key, though, which is surprising that it doesn't. So the suggestion from Scott is to just change the name of this value to ID, and that will probably do the trick. But I would assume that saying has key has the same effect. Again, assume, where I thought it would auto increment on its own. We do have the ability. Yeah, the config should work too. We do have the ability to set it. I guess I need to call out the property explicitly here. Let's try this guy again. Thought you could just throw it fluently in here, but that doesn't seem to want to work. So customer. And I'm going to line these up in my favorite way. Right, Peter? Line those dots up. Love those dots. Let's see. Customer ID. That's, yeah, property value generated on add. Oh, you like, Scott likes the way I line my dots up. Everybody's got their style. Let's refresh or rebuild. Entity Framework's putting me through the paces today. So this was supposed to be like an hour-long stream. I think we're on hour 2.5. And it's because of little nitpicky stuff like this that's just driving me insane today. So Peter's saying now refactor the name and watch everything get misaligned because of the way I've done this. I don't refactor. No, I'm just kidding. Throw that out there. I don't refactor anyway, so it doesn't matter. I do refactor when I don't write things perfect the first time, which you guys know isn't true because you watched the first couple hours of this hot mess. Nothing has gone to plan today, so we're hacking away at this little by little. So we'll rerun the app yet again. And let's see. We can list our customers. We know we haven't added anything because this is not going well. Let's try one more time. Submit and fail. Wow. So we're adding the customer with the same ID every time, and it does not want to stop setting it at 1. Shoot. Entity Framework is a pain today. I don't ever recall having to do this my entire life, and it should be just as easy as setting this up. And unless they're changing a bunch of stuff in Entity Framework I'm not aware of, like why is this happening? We're setting it up with the Fluent API. I know I rebuilt the project and reran it, so we should have the latest version of the code here. So, sorry I'm having to read through docs. This isn't what I expected to happen either. If you add an entity to the context that has a value assigned to the property, EF will attempt to insert the value rather than generate a new one. A property is considered to have a value assigned. If it is not assigned, value null. I'm wondering, first of all, I don't know where it's getting the 1 from. So it's Is the one being bound when it's coming in? In-memory doesn't support auto increment? I don't know about that. I think I've done this plenty of times and not had an issue with it. I'm going to do something really hacky. This is not the best practice. Well, first of all, let's double check something here. Let's go, I'm going to make one change. This may break some other things. I have a feeling that because it's not null, it needs to be null in order for it to auto-assign. Yeah, I shouldn't have to query and get the max customer ID and increment it myself. The database should be able to do it on its own. Even though it's in-memory database, it should work. At least in my... Let's double check before I do any more of this. Let me take everybody's advice and say in-memory DB C#, make sure I get the right one. Auto increment ID. Let's just double check. So somebody had that not working if ID was a string. I would understand. All right. I'm going to take some other advice that came across earlier. Let's just change this to ID. If it clears up the problem, which I think is really stupid since we went in and changed the property settings here. Just to try to get this error out of the way, just so we can move on, because any framework is very frustrating today. It doesn't want to do what it's done for me in the past a million times before. We'll call that ID. We're going to have other errors probably pop up because of that. We'll do a build, and we'll let the compiler find any more spots where we haven't named ID, customer ID, where we're seeding our database. I'm also going to set this to 0. So our initial seed, let's set that guy to 0, just to make sure that that's not part of the problem. Our builds work. Another spot where I need to do this is in create customer, I believe. No, because we're not using the ID in here anywhere. What about fetch customers? That refactored out. Okay, we're good to go. Everything built out. Let's run one more time. Let's see if just naming it ID will be good enough to tell any framework to quit screwing with me and not auto-incrementing the ID. And I also set it to 0. The initial ID that's in the database I set to 0. Hopefully that helps out. Give this guy a number, hit submit. I didn't see a breakpoint hit. That's either because the breakpoint's no longer there for some reason or because the error did not occur. Sample data controller. Okay, I didn't have the breakpoint set. Well, it should have been an error. It would have thrown an exception, which would have broke the code. I think we might have it. We did it! Yay! It probably was the fact that it was just not called ID. And I'm stubborn. I didn't want to change it. I wanted to try to fix it with the property settings, which should work. And any framework's going to fight me all the way today. It's because it wasn't default type. Yeah. I don't know. Now it's auto-incremented it to 2. It auto-incremented... that may be part of the problem too, is the other record I had initially set at 1, and it inserted it as 1, and then it didn't want to auto-increment this one. I don't know, it's working now, so we're doing some light CRUD operations. We did the C, we did the create, and we did the R, we did the read. So we have some working exchange of data between Blazor and Entity Framework. So this is what's really cool about in-memory database. So we've got 2 records. If I stop this project, so we'll go ahead and just kill this flat out. Let the debugging process end as well. Come back in here. Let's make sure our server's done. We'll go ahead and stop that website. Let that spin down. If I hit Control F5 right now, it'll probably try to spin it right back up and it'll lock up on me. So we'll give it a second. Remember, we had 2 records. We had Mr. Meeseeks and Seth Rogen in there. We'll go ahead and run this again. And because we're running the in-memory database, when we come back and we list customers, we only have 1. So 2.5 hours later, you can see the point I was trying to make at the very beginning. In-memory database is really cool because now we can go in and hack away and throw new records in there, create a bunch of entries and delete them and edit them, and we don't have to care about all those changes we made because when we reboot the app, those changes are gone. They do not persist anymore. This is the nice thing about in-memory database. However, it's a little bit more of a pain to set up than I remember, but now we have something to work with. So let's do something really cool with it. And let's hope for the sake of sanity today that it doesn't backfire on me yet again. So I'm going to go into Startup CS. And this is where, we moved it to Program CS. Thanks to Scott, if you're still there. Scott showed us to move it to Program CS, and we can do some database seeding in here. I'm going to move the database seeding out to a function. So we can just call it and kind of, because I'm going to put a little more seed stuff in here. And I don't want it to muddy up everything that's happening in the host builder. So the part that has our scope here, let's see, host builder, host build. So we're going to need a reference to host. Let's do this. Let's see if we use refactoring tools to do this. We'll do extract method. That worked just fine. We'll call it seed database. There's our refactoring tools are awesome in Visual Studio. VS I meant. I haven't done VB in forever. I don't know why I said that. So now we have our seed database thing, our function abstracted out. And instead of doing var new customer, let's do this. I showed you guys this really cool tool a couple episodes ago. If you haven't seen it already, you're probably going to enjoy this. I'm going to go into dependencies. I'm going to add a new reference, our new Git package. And I'm going to add a little helper thing that I love to do lots of work with. It's called genfoo. So we'll do genfoo. Genfoo generates test data, realistic looking test data. And it does it via reflection, which is awesome. So we'll install that. So now we have genfoo available on our server. We can come back into Program CS. We need to add a reference up here in our using. We'll say using genfoo. And again, this isn't something you do in production. This is just something to build demos and explore new frameworks like Blazor and whatever else might come down the pipeline. And what we're going to do is generate some test data and inject it into our database. So let's do a list of things. So we need a list of customer. Whoa, IntelliSense went bananas there. List. We don't have lists because we don't have generic in. We might have been better off moving this to an external file even, because we're really muddying up our program CS with lots of dependencies. Again, not best practice stuff. This is demo, hack away, learn a framework stuff. So we're going to say list of customer. and we'll call it customers. Thanks for the suggestion, IntelliSense. And we'll say A. A is a shortcut for GenFoo. A tells GenFoo we want to generate data. We can say A list of, and we can say customer. So we have a list of customers. We can specify how many records we want here. If we look down, we say item count. So on item count, let's inject 10 records, okay? So we'll generate 10 records with GenFoo. GenFoo is going to look at customer, and it's going to say first name, last name, company name, total orders, and it will automatically find names to insert there. And in total orders, it should generate a random number, I hope. So let's go to program CS, where I left off. And we're not going to need this customer anymore. Take that out. Instead of add customer, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, and add range should work here. And we need to pluralize that. So now we should be able to do a list of customers. And we could even shorthand this. We don't need all this. We could actually just take a list of customer and just jam it right here. But just so everybody can see kind of imperatively where these things are coming from, we'll leave it like that for now. Let's build. Because this is our server, we need to make sure the server gets built. I believe whenever you make changes to the client side, you can just refresh from the browser and it works. But when we do the server, we need to make sure there's a build. The build's passed, I believe. I didn't see anything fail there. Nothing failed loading this. Let's list customers, and boom. Look at that. Since they already had IDs set, the auto ID feature in the database did not auto ID these. That's because GenFoo picked an ID. We could tell GenFoo to ignore that field if we wanted to, and it wouldn't fill that in, but it's not bothering me. We can try to insert a customer just to make sure it doesn't have an issue. It should look and see there's already record 26 and not insert another. Hopefully that's what it would do. The company names aren't too bad. Government, VHS. Okay, maybe they're not the best. First name, last name's pretty good. So it actually picks up real first names and last names, and then it fills in the total orders for us. GenFoo is so freaking cool. I love it. This gets us a lot of records to play with, so we can do things like delete things and edit and update things without having to manually put them in or have this gigantic seed that's like add new item over and over and over again. So we just do add range, and add range takes care of it for us. So really cool stuff. Like I said, we can override too. We can do an A configure, I think it is, customer, and we could say configure. I'm trying to remember how to do this part here. I think we say fill. Fill. Then we need an expression. We say ID. We could tell it to not set an ID in here, and I think we could do equals 0, something like that. It'll always fill it with a 0. Maybe I'm wrong. Cannot contain an assignment operator. ID. Let's see, data. Property type, property name. Comma 0, that may be it. Let's see. Was there a... there's a filler. You can set these up. GenFoo's website's back up. Last time I tried to demo this, their website was down. So their website is back up. Let's see. I think there may be more documentation on their or their GitHub repo. Fill, there it is, with range is one of the things we could do. comma, and then a function will also do it. So you can also say fill method. So there's a lot of ways to do this. And let's try fill. Let's see, person, fill method, set middle name. This one may actually do it here. So instead of fill, it's fill method. Int. Instead of middle name, whoops. See if we can get IntelliSense here. Yeah, ID. Instead of null, we'd say 0. And no, it didn't work. Oh, ID equals 0. Nope, still didn't work. I know this will work. We'll do fill this way. It's probably the easier way to do it. ID, comma, and then it needs a method. 0, like that. Boom. So these will all be zeros, and then it should pick up and auto ID them. So Control-Shift-B. So we end up getting into some Gen Foo again, but I love, yeah. Oh, sorry, Peter Morris has got it. Yeah, that's exactly. The return probably isn't even necessary. You could write it the way you have it in chat. So let's see. That should do the trick. Control F5. And now they should be order 0 or 1 through whatever instead of those random numbers that were inserted. The random number thing is really handy though, because you saw it gave the order total field some data. And something's taking forever. I think my build hung. Nope, build's not hung. Or the app hung. Process failure. Never seen that before. Let's try one more time. Let's do rebuild. Make sure everything's up. Yep, everything's up to date. Control F5. Maybe filling those with zeros wasn't a great idea either because it doesn't seem to want to work. Okay, it doesn't like filling it with zeros. Not sure why. So the point being you can do these things. I think Entity Framework doesn't like the fact that it has all these records. The records the bulk insert. Excuse me. It doesn't like that. Even though it's only 10 records, it doesn't seem to like that. You could also, when you're adding them, you could also increment over the array and change the value. You could do a select and map them to a different value. Those things work as well. But you can fill things with custom values, which is really cool. Whether or not any framework will accept them is a whole other story. So let's rebuild that. Let's go back to our working copy. I think I'm going to save this out, and next week we'll pick it up and we'll do some more operations on it, maybe make the components look a little better and continue a project, which is something we haven't done before. I'll try to find some more community projects to talk about as well. So we had some great projects last week. Peter's Fluxer project was really awesome to look at. I had a lot of fun with that. That made for a great show. I'll try to see if there's some more projects like his out there that we can do some more work with. We'll continue this one as well. We'll do some round trip stuff with CRUD operations and make some better looking forms and all that kind of stuff. Now that we have a base to play with, getting it set up took a lot longer than I expected today. I was expecting just to be a quick, simple, here's how to add an in-memory database, and now we can do some CRUD, and we're done in an hour and a half, maybe tops. But in-memory database fought us all the way this afternoon, and that was pretty brutal. So now we have it working. We're able to seed it with some large amounts of data very quickly. Again, GenFu can scale this up. We could add thousands of records if we needed to, which is what I was talking about earlier. I've done virtualization demos with in-memory database, which is why all of this surprised me at the difficulty. The Telerik UI for ASP.NET grid controls, or Kendo UI grids, do this really cool thing called virtualization. So I can have millions of records and render a data grid on my web page and just scroll through it just smooth as butter. And I use GenFu to demo that because I'm not going to go build out a database and do a seeding of millions of records through the ways that you would normally seed a database. GenFu, I can just say, I can just up this number, say add range, and then my in-memory database gets hit with all those records when my app spins up for the first time, and then I can demo that really cool virtualization thing. So like I said, I've used this a lot of times to demo that, and for some reason it's just been a pain today. So either something has changed or my memory is a little fuzzy. But thanks for helping Scott Saber with the resolution on that. Everybody else chipped in trying to figure it out as well, which was really cool of everyone. Thanks for sticking around. Let's see. Lohith says, pick a NuGet package available for Blazor every episode and make a section dedicated to those packages. That's kind of the idea of what I've been trying to do. I traveled for 2 weeks straight. So it's been difficult to go out and find those packages and at least be knowledgeable enough of what they are supposed to do to talk about them. I initially had taken a look at Peter's Fluxor project before, so that was really easy to talk about, but I haven't had a chance to look at anybody else's stuff. Yeah. Feel free to make suggestions as well, everyone in chat. That's part of the show is you guys have your input and especially helping me through the problems here live and whatnot. But feel free to hit me on Twitter or in the chat room here. So my Twitter is the same as, I'll put it in the chat. That's my Twitter, as well as pretty much any other website I'm on. But shoot me on Twitter a message and say, this is a cool package I found. Check this one out. Maybe I'll put it on the show next week. I'm also in the Gitter channel for ASP.NET Blazor. So if you go to Gitter, and I'll put this in the chat, and I put it in my show notes last week. I'll include it in the show notes this week as well. I'm on the Gitter channel. I find stuff in here from time to time. And I think this is where I found your project, Peter. You were saying that you had a new version of it or something, and I checked it out, and I thought it was really cool. So there's lots of good stuff happening in the Gitter. Have I talked about Awesome Blazor? Haven't seen Awesome Blazor. Is that on... This is another place I scope things out for the show. Blazor.net. Is this in the community section of Blazor.net? Awesome Blazor. This is a community documentation thing. Is it a... So this is just demos and stuff, right? This might be somewhere I can dig through some things. How is this different, I wonder, from the community section? Is this just another version of it? Cool. Okay, I'll have to look at this. There's a lot of good examples in here. Lots of demos. I may talk about Blazedown sometime too. That was one that I did a while back, but it's a really cool demo of my own. There's some stuff in here that just gets too deep to talk about. I saw this one. This asteroids thing was really neat. So somebody did asteroids. There's no way I could go over it, but I will put things like this in the opening of the show, like just to point them out for people to go check them out on their own. Like, this is just nuts. I can't believe this exists. Like, somebody's really done asteroids. So there's lots of cool things in there. So those will be in the opening of the show. Big projects that are too deep for me to demo. But we can hack at some of these other things, like the Tour of Heroes is a good one, and I know that's yours, Lohith. We could do some Tour of Heroes sometime, see how that all works. Are you doing CRUD on Tour of Heroes? Or is it just in memory, like in the app client side? I haven't dug into it. I saw that you recreated it, but I haven't actually dug in to play with it. I guess all I have to do is look in here. Oh, so you do the full server and everything. Cool, we'll have to check that out sometime. Lots of goodies in here. It's in memory. Okay, cool. All right, so we are done for today. My voice is starting to go. My brain is fried. Again, you can find all of the show notes shortly in on my website. So again, my name. I do everything by my name. I know it's not an easy name to remember, but it works well. So my Twitter, my everything is just my name. And I'll post show notes here within like the next 30 minutes. And I'll include the docs for in-memory database, GenFu, the links that I showed at the opening of the show. I think if there's anything else that you guys would like to see in there, just give me a shout and I'll put them in there. I believe that's everything I covered today. Trying to think what else is in there. I'm not traveling anymore till November, so I've got at least 2 shows that I have time to prepare for. I will be on vacation, but I'm not going to stop my shows for vacation. I'm not going anywhere. It's a staycation. Doing things around the house, getting ready for winter, all those sorts of housekeeping activities. Kids are off of school, so I might as well take some time off as well. But I'll keep bringing some shows on Friday at 2 p.m. And we'll see what we can put together for next week. Hopefully it works a little bit better than some of the issues we ran into today. Those were surprises. Again, like I said, I've done in-memory database so many times, and to watch it fail like that just threw me off. So thanks for helping me through it, and watch the website here in the next 30 minutes. We'll have the show notes up. Take care until next time. We'll do this again on Friday. Thanks, guys.